Talk, and this is what I'm calling the RCT Show, Episode 1. I'm here with Fetch also from RCT, one of our editors and writers, and we're just gonna talk a little about the K-State game from last weekend and the Baylor game tomorrow, and what else lies ahead for the Jayhawks this season. So just to kind of get things kicked off, K-State brought Sandstorm back, but it wasn't enough to get the win. What did anything stand out to you about the game on Saturday, Fetch?
Well, I was fortunately at a bar watching the game, so I didn't get to hear any of the Sandstorm or any of the. I assume I can't say what the actual chant was on here, but we all know which one it is. So I didn't get to hear anything, but just from watching it, I think the obvious stuff was just kind of the foul trouble that people got into. Traylor and Lucas both fouled out. Someone from K-State fouled out as well, I believe.
DJ Johnson, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. So it was, kind of the game that I think that K-State wanted to play, just a lot of roughing it up and trying to get to the line as much as they can and stuff like that. So I think the game plan from K-State's point of view wasn't too bad. But, Kansas, for all the talk that a couple national guys had as far as them not being a tough team or whatever, I mean, once again, they go to, I don't know, I think K-State's kind of an overrated environment as far as tough environments go, but they definitely show up for Kansas. So, I mean, for Kansas to go in there and get a win when Perry Ellis had to come out from being hurt, and when Landon Lucas, who all of a sudden is like the most important post player in the country somehow, when he was in foul trouble, for them to get a win there was pretty big, I think. So I think it was a good effort, but definitely not pretty all the time.
Yeah, it wasn't, and like I had said on the preview that I did Saturday morning, the line was only 4.5 for a reason. Kansas State, they're good at what they do. They may not be an exceptionally talented team, but they can slow you down, muddy things up, and make you play a slow, gritty, tough game that you don't necessarily want to play, especially when you've got an athletic advantage like Kansas does. So I know a lot of people were picking blowouts. I really wasn't on that bandwagon just because of the style that K-State plays. And, like you said, I think they probably brought the right game plan. But, in the end, Kansas, I think, just had too much talent for, no matter how hostile the environment was. I just don't think Kansas State was able to match it, although they came close, pulling it within 3, I think, a couple of times down the stretch, but it just didn't seem to be enough.
Yeah. If you look at the KenPom win probability, it never gets, in the second half, it never gets even like remotely close to even. But obviously, yeah, they were. It looks like they were within 3 pretty late, and then so this is one. It's one of those where the win probability is way skewed towards Kansas, but if K-State hits a 3 on that possession where Mickelson hits the ball out of bounds, then it's all the way up the other way. So it was, to me, and again, this is probably from not really getting to sit down and watch it like in my living room and stuff, but it really did kind of seem like, even though it was getting kind of close there, it never really felt like Kansas was in trouble to me. It just seemed like they would be able to, and I don't know if that's because I don't, self so good at those late game scenarios, or if it's just because I didn't really think K-State could make enough shots to win or what, but it didn't really seem like Kansas was ever in too big of trouble.
Yeah, no, I felt the same way watching the whole thing. They'd gotten up by so many, and I think Perry Ellis having to sit out so much of the second half with injuries was probably a big part of Kansas State coming back. But yeah, it never had the feeling of a game that they were losing control of. It was just a game that was kind of, when teams jump out to those big leads, just overall they tend to even out as the game goes on. And Kansas State made the run, and I felt like Kansas withstood it pretty well, and came away with the victory that they really needed to continue to feel completely comfortable. If they lose that, they're back to only one game up. I didn't know West Virginia's the West Virginia Iowa State game is on as we're recording this right now, but I know that's a tight one. But if West Virginia wins that, then they stay just one game behind. Kansas and Oklahoma would be right there as well. So I think it was an important game to pick up, even though winning over Kansas State, especially with where they are in the conference right now, it doesn't sound glamorous. I think it was a more important and more challenging game than maybe was given credit for. But it's good to come away with the win. While we're on the topic of Kansas State, before we move on, just briefly, obviously there's been some controversy since the border war ended. I know a lot of Kansas fans like to say that KU and K-State isn't really a rivalry. I don't know about you. I'm of the opinion that that's mostly something the Kansas fans say to troll Kansas State fans. But it seems to me like the rivalry is almost taken on more meaning off the field and off the court than it has on it. It's been so disproportionately weighted toward Kansas in basketball and toward Kansas State in football. But it seems to evoke a lot of fighting between the two fan bases just recently in the last couple of years. Is that something that you've observed, or am I just seeing more of it because I'm on the internet too much?
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I mean, personally, I never really considered K-State a rival, but I mean, I think that's more a function of, first of all, I'm not from Kansas. So like when I first started watching Kansas, first started like learning about the history of Kansas and all that jazz, I mean, Missouri was always the team. And I mean, they were always the team for a lot of Kansas fans. But I think that, maybe for Kansas fans living in Western Kansas, or maybe for, just Kansas fans living in Kansas, period, K-State was always kind of like a close second. But for me, it was always. And the other thing is, I'm 28, so I wasn't around when Kansas State was good at basketball. So they've always just kind of been like this team, and like, yeah, they've had, the Michael Beasley team was pretty good, and that team, 2010, I think it was, when they went
with Pullen.
Yeah, I mean, that team was pretty good and stuff. So I mean, they've had teams here and there, but they've always just kind of been like another team in the league to me. So, to me, they're not, I don't really worry about them any more than I worry about like Iowa State or West Virginia or anything like that. But it's clear that, they care a whole heck of a lot what Kansas fans think. And I think that in turn, that has kind of made Kansas fans dislike them more. So I think in a way, K-State has kind of like forced their way into a little bit of a rivalry that maybe started with, okay, we need someone because Missouri's gone. But with the whole Starship Enterprise thing, which to me, like, see, that's the thing. Like, if Missouri did it, I'd probably be like, hey, screw those guys. But like, K-State doing it just made me laugh. Like, I thought it was awesome and hilarious.
Yeah, I know they resent the hell out of it when we say things like this, but to me, I wasn't offended by that in the least. I just thought it was another example of just how much they care about Kansas, that they're bringing them into the halftime show. They're using their mascot on the
right
their marching band's halftime show and their season opener that is against South Dakota or whoever it was. They're definitely, like you said, they're very concerned with what Kansas thinks.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing is they're just so like inept. I guess Missouri was never much of a basketball power either, except for that last year they were pretty good. And I mean, I guess they had a couple of years they made the Elite Eight that one year and stuff. But right now it's like the more of the headlines are, you're right, they're off the field or off the court. They're about what the band does or about the athletic director talking about whether or not they can play Sandstorm, which, by the way, I don't So, this is for another podcast, but at some point someone's going to have to explain to me why Sandstorm is this like amazing thing that gets them pumped up. Like, isn't it, it's just like a dance music song, right?
Yeah, it's electronic dance music. If it weren't for sporting events, I don't think I ever would have heard it, but I know that Manhattan's not the only place that uses it. I think there are plenty of other teams that use it as pump up music, but yeah, they seem to have a special relationship with it out there.
I think that if that came on at a sporting event I was at, I would just think that it's the lamest thing of all time. But I don't really get into that kind of music anyway, I guess. So I'm probably not the target audience.
All right, well, we'll move on. Since they got the win there, they have a 2-game lead in the Big 12 with 4 games remaining. 2 of those are going to be War 2, or you could even make the argument that 3 of those are going to be pretty tough. Tomorrow night, or by the time this comes up, it'll be tonight. They'll be playing at Baylor. They have not been given much trouble by Baylor over recent years. But Baylor seems to be playing pretty well right now, and it is a road game in the Big 12. I never seem to get that worried about games against Baylor for whatever reason. I guess it's just Self's track record against them, but realistically, this is a game that they could lose.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the fence about this one, just because who knows how effective Perry Ellis is going to be, and Baylor obviously is a good team. I mean, right now they're the second best offense in the Big 12, which is interesting. But I think Kansas matches up really well against them. I mean, first of all, like Baylor gets a lot of their points by crashing the glass, and Kansas, at least when Landon Lucas is in, has been a pretty good defensive rebounding team this year, which by the way kind of came out of nowhere because they have basically the same personnel as last year, and they were awful last year at it. So yeah. I have no idea, but so that helps. And then obviously Baylor plays that zone a lot, and when a team shoots the 3 ball as well as Kansas does, that's not really what you want to do, but whatever. Thanks, Scott Drew, I guess. And
yeah,
then I think,
go ahead.
The last real quick thing about Baylor is they don't shoot a lot of threes, so like they're probably not going to be a team that is going to take a bunch of threes, and then if they have a game like Oklahoma State did where they shot 50% from 3, they're just going to win no matter what you do. Baylor doesn't shoot enough threes to do that, and Kansas has been a pretty good defensive team from 2. So Baylor's good, but I think Kansas matches up well enough with them to where they're going to win, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them lose either.
Yeah, I think Kansas, their offense is just built to do well against the zone, like you mentioned. And just like you said, if Baylor shoots 50% from 3, they're going to win. If Kansas can't buy a 3 to save their lives, then they're going to have a hard time getting those easy looks around the rim against the zone that tends to pack it in a little bit into the paint. So. I mean, a lot of it may just depend on whose shots are falling and whose aren't. I have no doubt in my mind that Kansas is the more talented team. This is not, even though they're doing well, they're playing well. I don't look at this as being one of Scott Drew's more talented teams at Baylor. I think he's probably had 3 or 4 better ones here just in the last 7 or 8 years, I think. I don't know that there's really a single big NBA prospect on that team. But yeah, and Waco's not exactly known as one of the most hostile environments. So I think it may just be one of those things that comes down to whose shots are falling and whose aren't. But I'll probably go ahead and pick Kansas just because of Self's track record against them.
Yeah. Yes. If you're going by kind of what the national people thought, or what the mainstream people thought, Scott Drew might be like a dark horse coach of the year type guy. I actually picked Baylor 4th in the league, and it looks like that's probably what they're going to finish at. So, I did not see Oklahoma coming. Again, that's probably for another podcast, but I did not see Oklahoma being as good as they are. But, Baylor's kind of been sort of what I thought they would be this year. But yeah, you're right. They don't they don't really have. I mean, Torian Prince is probably like a back end of the first round type guy. Uh, if Rico Gathers were a couple inches taller, he'd probably have a shot. But they just have kind of a collection of a lot of really good college guys. So, and I think that kind of helps. I think that's good for Drew. I think like he earns a lot of the crap he gets as far as some of the X's and O's stuff he does, and some of the like, if it's a tie game with 45 seconds left, Kansas is probably going to be about 95% to win that game. But there is no doubt in my mind that as far as, coaches who can get guys to play hard for him, that he is like right up there with everyone else in the league. It just seems like, his players love playing for him. And I think that's, more important than really anything else. Recruiting is obviously important, and, being able to develop talent is important. But I mean, K-State's had some guys, and it's pretty clear that everyone just hates playing for Bruce Weber, and that's why they have so much turnover, and that's why they can't ever really get any momentum going. So I am pro Scott Drew, I guess, is what I'm saying, which feels weird to say.
Yeah, no, I really am too. I mean, he had a few years there where he was getting some really highly rated recruits. I know Pierre Jackson was pretty highly sought after. He had Perry Jones, who didn't really, I think, pan out the way they thought they would, but he was highly rated. Quincy Acey's still hanging around in the NBA, I think. So they had some legitimate talent there, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. But for the most part, I think they just tend to get, rangy, athletic guys that make it look like they're, it's a team full of future all-stars that should run everybody off the court. But in reality, I think in terms of basketball talent, they don't always have as much of it as it seems like they do, or as much as they're given credit for. And so I think the fact that they are they've missed the tournament a couple of years, but they're pretty consistently in the top half of the league. I know I heard on the radio recently that they have, aside from Kansas, they've got the most Big 12 wins of any team in the conference over the last 3 years. So, I would agree with you. I think he's not the best coach in the Big 12. He's not one of the probably 3 or 4 best, but he's still a very a good coach.
Yeah, he might be one of the best. Well, I don't know. I guess we probably shouldn't hash this list out right now live, but Self is 1, obviously. 2 is probably Lon Kruger. 3 is probably Huggins. And then I think there's kind of a lot of guys that you could probably argue for at 4. It might be Scott Drew.
It could be. I think he'd be in the conversation. You could probably you could maybe put Tubby Smith right in there. It could be. I think your top 3 are definitely the top 3. Self is 1, and then I think you could probably put Huggins and Kruger in any order. But yeah, after that, Shaka Smart's still a little unproven. I'm not ready to put him up there quite yet. So yeah, he may be in the I think you could probably safely say he's in the top half of coaches in the conference.
I think so. And I don't think that that's necessarily like an indictment on Big 12 coaching either, although at the bottom it's pretty bad.
Yeah. We'll move on from Baylor, and just quickly here, since we only have 4 games left in the Big 12 schedule, and then of course it's the conference tournament, and then it's March Madness. What are you looking to see out of the team? What do you want to see more of, or maybe less of, out of the team as we finish out the regular season and move on into the postseason?
I think the first thing is that Frank Mason's been playing a lot better. I mean, it's pretty clear that when he's playing well, Kansas is just a different team than when he's not.
Oh, did we lose you? Yeah, I think we lost Fetch, so I guess I can wrap this up here unless he's able to rejoin. Um, yeah, like you said, Frank Mason has really been on a roll here of late, and obviously he'll be vital to KU's success as we finish things up. Um, yeah, I think Devonte Graham continuing to play well is going to be important. Hey, are you back?
Back. Yeah, I don't know what happened. It's just
All
that I
right.
got room to the call, but cool. You can finish your point, and then I'll
Well,
continue.
I had just kind of picked up where you left off. I think Mason continuing to play like Frank Mason is going to be vital as they get into the postseason, and confident upperclassman guard play is always sometimes maybe it gets overblown, but I think it is important. And then Devonte Graham continuing his recent stretch of play should be really important as well. If they can get both of those guys on the same page, really playing at or close to their ceiling, I think they're going to be formidable in March.
Yeah. Yep, I agree. I mean, if you look at the three conference losses, Iowa State, he shot the ball fairly well, but 3 assists and 6 turnovers is not going to get it done. Oklahoma State, didn't shoot the ball very well. 2 of 7 from two, and then 0 assists and 2 turnovers. And then West Virginia, again, not very good. 2 assists, 7 turnovers. So it's pretty clear that when he has a bad game, Kansas is in trouble. And then, defensively, I think he's kind of been rough off the ball. And this might be just like a memory thing where you see some bad play and think it's like that all the time. He's gotten beat backdoor a few times and stuff, and that's not very good. But on the ball, I think he's kind of back to where he was earlier in the year, where he was pretty good. And I think offensively, he's not forcing the issue as much. He's not trying to drive into 4 guys and just throw something up. He's kind of, trusting his passing ability more, which is nice. Even though I don't think he's ever going to be like a great passer, he's at least, kind of making an effort and kicking it out to shooters and stuff.
Right.
Other than that, I mean, what do you think about either of the freshman big men getting more playing time, or Hunter Mickelson for that matter getting more playing time?
I mean, I've always been kind of a proponent of Mickelson, but at the same time, I understand why Self doesn't play him a lot. I think he leads the team in fouls per 40 minutes. I think it's up around like 8 or 9. It seems like he comes in. He's so aggressive in going after blocked shots and steals, and he is good. He's good at generating both, but he's so aggressive and gets so reachy that he becomes he's very foul prone, and then he's pretty limited in what he gives you offensively. So I think in that respect, he kind of falls into that category with like a Jamari Traylor, where there are certain things that he does well, but he's not a complete enough player to really demand a lot of playing time. And then as far as the freshmen go, I think we're just too far into the season to expect anything more in terms of real measurable improvement from them. They kind of are what they are. I think Bragg can come in and give you some points. He's one of the better players on the team and scoring right around the rim. And he's got a nice jump shot, but he is a defensive liability. And then you've got Diallo who can come in and just make highlight reel plays and then, just completely botch an offensive set or lose his man. And, you never know exactly what you're going to get out of him, but it's not going to be especially polished. So I think what we're seeing now with Landon Lucas starting and really playing as long as he can, given the foul trouble that he tends to get himself into, I think that's probably what we're going to see from here on out as far as the big man rotation goes.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I mean, Bragg's big problem, like you said, is he just can't defend at all. And I mean, he fouls a lot too. And he also can't rebound. I mean, at least, Hunter Mickelson's been a pretty good defensive rebounder. Diallo has been a really good defensive rebounder. Of course, he hasn't really played enough to make that worth anything. And his thing too is he just gets pushed off the block by anyone who can post him up, which is a bit of a problem. I don't know. I go back and forth on it because, I watch him totally screw up running the offense, and then I watch him run around like a chicken with his head cut off on defense. But then you watch him get beat, and he just like comes back, and when he blocked that Oklahoma State guy, that was incredible.
Right.
I hope he stays. I don't think he's going to, but I hope he stays because I think next year he could be awesome and be, definitely. I mean, I think he's probably going to be a lottery pick anyway, just because he's so athletic and all that. But I think if he came back, he could be a top 10, top 5 guy.
Yeah, I mean the ceiling is obvious. I mean you see the kind of wingspan and reach that he has combined with just the incredible speed and leaping ability that he's got. I mean his athletic gifts are just unreal. It just hasn't translated into basketball talent yet. But we know that the NBA drafts probably as much as any sport out there, they draft on potential. So yeah, if he wants to leave this year, he probably can.
Yeah, and I mean, I love Greg. I mean, I think he's going to be one of the best players on the team as soon as next year, and that's even with Mason's going to be back. I think Selden's probably coming back at this point, although I don't know. He might leave just because his stock is not going to improve anymore. I think Svi's probably going to be back, and I think he's going to be good too. But Bragg, we're just saying his worst attribute is defense, but who's the last guy who came to Kansas under Bill Self and then didn't improve defensively? I mean, even you see Traylor out there guarding big men on screen and rolls and does well. I mean, Perry Ellis has gotten a lot better defensively. Landon Lucas is like a borderline all Big 12 defensive team guy. And I can't even really, I mean, the Morai weren't very good defensively, but you could still argue that they got better.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he had Kevin Young playing like a great defender by the end of his career. So, yeah, I think everyone you can count. You can even look at Brandon Green, and he's still not a good defender. But if you look at where he was his freshman year, where you almost couldn't even afford to have him on the court. Yeah, everybody seems to make strides, and I guess we're talking about it in terms of Kansas because that's the team that we follow. I guess everybody really should be making improvements while they're in college, but it doesn't always happen.
Right.
And you really do see it with literally every player under Bill Self.
Yeah, I think the last guy I can think of who wasn't really that great was probably Thomas Robinson. I mean, he was more of a just stand there and let the guy shoot over the top, but at the same time, he could kind of gamble a little bit more because he had Jeff Withey behind him to erase everything. And I mean, he was shooting the ball like every, 2 out of every 5 times we were down there. So if you're going to be doing that, you're probably going to be saving some energy on defense. So I could kind of give him a break for that. So
yeah, and I almost wonder if Self didn't tell him, just stay out of foul trouble because we need you too much on the boards and on the offensive end.
I think that's probably right because that team had I mean, Tyshawn Taylor had a really good season too, but I mean, other than that, Jeff Withey wasn't a creator. Kevin Young couldn't score. Elijah Johnson was kind of only good in spurts. Connor Tehan.
Yeah. Connor Tehan will always have a place in my heart for the comeback against Missouri in their last border war game in the Allen Fieldhouse. I think he went 4 for 4 in that game. But outside of that, I don't know how he played as many minutes as he did on a championship quality team.
Yeah, I hope he's not watching this, but he's got to be the worst player to play in a Final Four in, I mean, a long time, right? And like major minutes.
Right. Yeah. Well, he was the first guard off the bench that year. I mean, it was really him. He and Kevin Young were the bench that year. Right. So
yeah, Justin Wesley played a little bit.
Yeah.
That was Tharp's freshman year, right?
Yeah.
But he was terrible as a freshman.
Right.
So yeah, that team was, I don't know, man. Just goes to show what you can do with 2 All-Americans and the best defensive player in the last 20 years.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've veered quite a bit off topic here, but it's always fun to reminisce about the 2012 team. So just to wrap things up, so what do you expect? Obviously we'll do more more shows, more broadcasts before the end of the season. But just for now, what do you expect out of the last 4 games, and where do you think they'll finish up? Do you think they'll win the title outright?
Jeez. I think they probably will, because I don't think they're going to lose at home, and I don't think they're going to lose both at Baylor or Texas. One, I think they match up well with Baylor, and two, I think the way Texas kind of came out right away and played them at home is going to hopefully kind of stick with them, and they'll come out. And I think they're probably a little sick of hearing about Shaka Smart in that 2011, which, by the way, well, Jesus, another off-topic thing. No one has milked more out of a lucky 4-game stretch than that guy. But so I think that they have a chance to win both. I don't think they're going to, just because it's tough to win on the road, and they're good, but they're not they're not the Warriors compared to the rest of the NBA or anything. They're just when you're only a little bit better than the other team and it's on the road and you're college kids, I mean, anything can happen. So I'm kind of thinking they're going to go 3-1, which would win it outright. Obviously, I'd like for them to win it by multiple games, because I tweeted at Jesse Newell that they'd win by multiple games, just kind of not even really seriously, just kind of because I did it last year and they were kind of a weird final possession at Oklahoma away from doing it. So I'm going to keep doing it until I'm right. And then, just kind of nationally, who the heck knows at this point? I mean, everyone is kind of the same, I think, at the top. And it's just going to depend on matchups, and it's going to depend on where the games are. But, I wouldn't be surprised if they lost in the second round again. And I wouldn't be surprised if they won the whole thing. I mean, I think anything in between that is fair game.
Yeah, that's about where I am. I think they'll either lose at Baylor or at Texas, probably not both. Although if they do, on the plus side, we have a bet going, and you'll have to write an ode to the White Sox and Jay Cutler, so there'll at least be some benefit out of it. But
I will before I do that.
But yeah, I think they'll probably go 3-1, lose one of those games, win the conference title outright, and then who knows in the Big 12 tournament, they could easily lose in the semifinals to any of those teams that are going to finish in the top half. They could win the whole thing. The Big 12 tournament's fun, but in the end, it doesn't mean a whole lot. I think they'll have their seed wrapped up, and probably even their region wrapped up before they get to that point. And then, like you said, anything from the round of 32 to the national championship game is probably on the table. So I think we're in agreement there.
Yeah, right, I am an avowed non-carer about the Big 12 tournament. Even though I think it probably is better for you to win the Big 12 tournament than lose right away, I just kind of hope that they rest up and all this stuff. Also, I know we're going, but I'm watching the Timberwolves Celtics here in the background, and Marcus Smart just had an egregious flop. So
you don't say.
Throwback for you.
No, I actually saw a Vine of him on Twitter, and I forget who they were playing, but just the other day where he tried to draw a charge and basically threw himself back and slid, I think, about 10 feet across the court trying to sell it. And the NBA refs don't buy into that quite as much as the college refs do. So I don't think he's getting as many calls as he did at Oklahoma State.
Yeah, and NBA refs by and large are not awful at their jobs, which is a nice breath of fresh air when you watch some of these college games.
Yeah. No, agreed. All right. Well, yeah, we've gone a little over here, but anything else you have just about the season as we go down the home stretch, I guess?
No, I mean, I think that they're kind of hitting their stride here, which is nice. I think that, they're never going to have a game where everyone's clicking at all cylinders at the same time, but I think they have enough talent to where, enough guys can do it in enough games. I mean, just for an example, Devontae Graham had a pretty bad game on Saturday, but Frank Mason played really well, and Svi came off the bench and played really well. And one game Perry will be awesome, and then you'll have the Wayne Selden against Kentucky game. So I think as long as they can kind of keep that pattern up, and also they're going to be playing against in the tournament. They're going to be playing against non-Big 12 teams who don't know Kansas's offense as well. I don't know. I think they got a chance to go pretty deep.
Yeah, I know sometimes it gets painted as a weakness that they don't have a go-to guy or an alpha dog or whatever you want to call it. But, it's nice to know that you have guys in Ellis, Mason, Selden, even Graham who can all go off for 20-plus points in any given night, even though, they're not all going to do it at once and not be stuck in, say, Kentucky's boat where they've got a high ceiling. But, if Tyler Eulis has a bad night, then, I don't know how they're going to come away with the win in the tournament. So,
right.
Yeah, I like I guess the array of talent that Kansas has and can put on the court at any time.
Yeah, I will say Frank Mason's probably the most important guy, and I don't want to have to try and win a national championship without him playing at least, competently. And again, I don't want to do it without Perry Ellis playing at least competently. But other than that, I mean, I think that they can survive a disappearing act from pretty much anyone else.
Yeah, and they probably will, given the way Selden tends to play, and Graham has not been a big consistent scorer all year. So, you're not going to get that every time out. But right. Yeah, I'd say we agree. As long as Mason and Ellis can basically show up and be, they don't have to be at their ceiling the entire time, but just play good basketball the way they're capable of doing, then they should be all right. So that's all the time we have. Thank you for watching episode 1 of the RCT show. We'll be back again soon. I don't want to put a timestamp on it given our track record with podcasts around here, but we'll be back soon and we'll continue to talk everything KU. So thanks for watching.
See ya.